Well, good morning, Pelahatchie, and happy Easter to you. Cliff and I are out here next to Pelahatchie Lake, and we are ready to lead you and guide you in your worship of the resurrected Jesus. And we're going to do that starting with the classic Easter hymn, Because He Lives. So I want to invite you and your family to worship with us the Jesus who has come back to life.
God sent His Son, they called Him Jesus. He came to love, heal and forgive. He bled and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. How sweet to hold a newborn baby and feel the pride and joy He gives. But greater still, the calm assurance that child can face uncertain days. Because He lives, because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. And then one day I'll cross that river, I'll fight life's final war with pain. And then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory, and I'll know He lives. Because He lives, I can face tomorrow. Because He lives, all fear is gone. Because I know He holds the future, and life is worth the living just because He lives. And life is worth the living just because He lives. Alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled and striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I'll stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones He saved, till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on Him was laid, here in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground His body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again, and as he stands in victory, since curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his and he is mine, I'm bought with the precious blood of Christ. No guilt in life, no fear in death, this is the power of Christ in me, from life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can never pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. No power of hell, no scheme of man can never pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand.
Well, good morning, church. It's great to be with you this morning, and we're doing this recording on Good Friday, and I had a song on my heart all week, and this is going to go back a little bit. A lot of you are going to be familiar with this song, but it's, we celebrate the fact that here on Good Friday that this is the time that Jesus was on the cross, but a lot of people thought that was the end, and the disciples were nowhere to be found except for just John, and it's a reminder of how we don't need to lose hope even when things seem hopeless, because on that third day he rose again. And the song I'm going to sing for you today is Dallas Holmes' Rise Again. Go ahead, drive the nails in my hands, laugh at me where you stand. Go ahead and say it isn't me. The day will come when you will see, because I'll rise again. Ain't no power on earth can tie me down. Yes, I'll rise again. And death can't keep me in the ground. And go ahead and mock my name. My love for you is still the same. Go ahead and bury me, but very soon I will be free, because I'll rise again. There ain't no power on earth can tie me down. Yes, I'll rise again. And death can't keep me in the ground. Go ahead and say I'm dead and gone, but you will see that you were wrong. Go ahead, try to hide the sun, but all will see that I'm the one 'cause I'll come again. There's no power on earth can keep me back. Yes, I'll come again. Come to take my people back. Come to take my people back.
All right, church, we finally get to the passage that we've been looking forward to, the resurrection of Jesus. As we've been working through Luke, we've all been pointing to and anxiously trying to get to this story ever since Christmas. I want to ask that you would read with me in Luke chapter 24, beginning in verse 1. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and they went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. In their fright, the women bowed down with their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still with you in Galilee, the Son of Man must be delivered over to the hands of sinners, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again." Then they remembered his words. When they came back from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to the others. It was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Y'all know, and we know this, and let's just admit it on the front end, that this story is absolutely absurd. Like it's crazy, it's out there. It's like left field and then outside of left field kind of thinking, because it speaks against everything that we know to be normal and everything that we know to be true and just a reality of life. It speaks against our experiences. It speaks against our sensibilities, because death is final. There's nothing that comes after that. The possibility of this story is so far beyond our comprehension that it's hard for us to wrap our minds around. And I think that was true also for the people that were participating in this story. For those who were there, you think about the women, about Peter, like it was nonsense to them. And let's be honest, they didn't believe it. They didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know what to think about it. I want us to think about it and look at what the women do. All right, so these women go, and I love the beauty of it, is they're prepared to go and take care of their friend in his death and to prepare his body for the end. And they show up, they've got their spices, they go to the tomb, and they're looking for a dead body. And in verse 4, it says that obviously they don't find what they're looking for. It says, while they were wondering about this, when they didn't find the body in the tomb, while they were wondering about this, suddenly 2 men in clothes that gleamed like lightning stood beside them. And I want you to think about this word, wonder. It means to be puzzled. It means to be perplexed. It means to be at a loss. That's probably an emotion and a thought that most of us can relate to right now. We're perplexed. We're at a loss of what's happening in our life, what's happening in our world, what's happening with our businesses, why we're doing church, sitting on the couch. And that's the feeling that they had. They didn't know what was going on. And you think about how odd that would be. Like that would be so extremely confusing to go to a tomb expecting to find a body that you need to still prepare and do all this work to, and it not being there. It's not normal. And this feeling of wonderment, this feeling of perplexity is amplified by these 2 glowing men who are there, which is weird. And the questions, the things that they say, they tell them, you're looking for the wrong thing, and you're in the wrong place looking for it. And this is mind-blowing. Like these ladies came to take care of their dead friend. They've got their clothes, they've got their spices. They are mentally prepared to deal with the dead body of a person they loved. And they hear from these 2 men, they don't know phrases like the living one and he has risen. And it's beautiful. We get to go back and see the beauty that is there that these women could not comprehend in the moment. This little sliver of Easter light. This little glimpse of the idea like that Jesus isn't there, that the tomb is empty, and that there is the possibility of something on the backside of death. But these women, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't wrap their mind around it, not in that moment, not without context. They didn't know what to do with it. And these two glowing men who were standing there, and we understand them to be angels, they tell them what Jesus had said, that Jesus said, like, this is going to happen. And it says in verse 8 that they remembered. And I wonder, like in this remembering, if that's a sign of faith, if that's a word of belief. I don't know. But I know that the women were intrigued enough that they decided to go back and tell the men what they've seen. So they go back and they find the men disciples who were huddled up in the room, and they tell them what's happened. And I want to reread that, looking in verse 9. They came back from the tomb. They told all these things to the 11, to the others. It was Mary, Joanna, Mary, and the others with them who told this to the apostles. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed to them like nonsense. What an appropriate word. Like, this story is nonsense. It's idle talk because it's so unreal. It's so outside of the realm of possibility. And it's outside of what they could wrap their mind around. It's absurd is the word that I like to use, because dead men stay dead. Tombs don't empty themselves. Dead men don't come back from life because death is final, like it's the end. It's the thing that we fear because we understand that there is nothing behind it, because experience tells us that death eventually wins. Always. That's our common sense. That's the reality that we know. And they don't believe it. And I don't blame them, because it's that absurd. But here's the fun thing. Like, this idea that a dead man would come back to life and not be in the tomb, like he's not even there to talk to them according to Luke's story, it's so absurd. It's so out there. It's so crazy. It's so just the other side of what we can begin to imagine. It's just crazy enough that it might be true. Because, I mean, let's be real. Who would make this up? Who would create this type of story? Who would stir the raw emotions of these friends and these followers of Jesus by making up a story like this? So we see Peter doing what Peter does best and kind of jumping out in front and leading. In verse 12, he hears what these women have said, and it's just absurd enough that I got to go check this for myself. And look at what it does. And the way Luke writes it in verse 12, Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb, and bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Now, the contrast between verse 11 and verse 12 is fascinating, and I love that. I want you to see it. So like in verse 11, they did not believe because they thought there were nonsense. Like, so Peter is there in verse 11, this is crazy, this is nonsense, I don't believe you, leave me alone when I'm trying to eat lunch. And then in verse 12, he decides to go and look, and he ends that passage saying he's wondering. And this wondering is fascinating. Like, he goes from this can't possibly be true to, hold on, I've got to see this for myself, because what if it is? What if this absurd story is true? What if God really did raise Jesus from death? What if there is a reality that exists for us on the other side of death, that death is no longer the finale and the end-all be-all, but that there is something of existence beyond that we've not understood before, that we can't quite wrap our minds around, that even our imagination can't fully comprehend? What if there actually is something there? What if Jesus really is still alive? And I want to tell you something about yourself. Can I do that? I know that sounds kind of audacious, but I want to tell you something about you, that this is why you're watching this. This is why on a Easter Sunday morning, where you can just sit on your couch and do whatever it is you want, you have chosen to pull up this video, and it's why you're watching, because you have this question, this wondering that haunts your mind and it clings to your heart of what if? What if it's real? Because you're like Peter. And I think the absurdity of this story makes you wonder, like, could this possibly be true? Because it's just crazy enough to be true. And because you know, if this is true, if Jesus did come back from the dead, if there is life on the other side of death, if this Jesus that we talk about all the time really is still alive, if that's true, then it changes everything. So like Peter running to the tomb, you're listening to this to see if all of this Christian nonsense can be real. And I want you to think about what it says that Peter does. Like Peter hears the report of the women that come to him, and then he goes and he sees the empty tomb. And the way Luke writes it, he says that he walked away wondering to himself what had happened. Now, when the women were wondering, they had this sense of puzzlement, of perplexion. They were like, I don't know. They didn't know what to do with it. But the way Luke writes here this for Peter, it's a different word. Now for us, it both translates as wonder, but it's a different word. This word carries the idea of astonishment, of amazement. And I wonder, and I think maybe something clicked for Peter here. And that Luke tries to tell us that in the word that he chooses to use here for wonder, that Peter hears the absurdity, thinks, no, that can't possibly be true, but what if it is? He goes and he sees for himself, and then he is amazed that maybe it is. Maybe he has come back to life. Maybe all of this has been real all along. And I want to tell you something, I want to tell you that it's okay in thinking about Easter and thinking about the resurrection of Jesus and thinking about life after death, that it's okay to wonder in both forms. Like it's okay to be perplexed by this. It's okay to see this in the way that the women saw it, the very first eyewitnesses, and be like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't fully understand this, because let's be honest, none of us fully do. And it's okay to be perplexed and even overwhelmed by the concept of resurrection. And it's also okay to wonder in awe and in amazement, and to be marveled by the fact that Jesus has come back from the grave. And I want to encourage you to believe this, because this story is true. Like what is absurd, this absurdity has become reality. This impossible has become the truth. This story is true, and Jesus is alive. And the reason we know that is in the very next verses, we have more eyewitnesses. We have the women who were there. We have Peter who wonders. We have the people in the verses that come next who see Jesus walking around, because I know, I have felt and have seen and have tasted the peace and the love of a resurrected Jesus. I know it to be true. And I encourage you to believe it to be true. So I want to encourage you in two different things here on Easter Sunday. The first is to find comfort and security in the risen Jesus. There's not a lot of comfort to be had right now, and I get that. I understand. There's very little security to be had right now, and I get that, and that's okay. But you can find comfort and security in a resurrected Jesus, because if he can beat death, there is no end to that sentence. If this story is true and Jesus beats death, then nothing can stand in front of him, because that is the finale. That is the end-all be-all of human experience. And if Jesus beats death, then he can beat anything. And that can bring comfort for us and peace for us and security for us in holding on to the power of a resurrected Jesus. And I also want to encourage you to believe in this story. If you've not believed the story, if you're like the women, you're like, I'm not so sure, allow your wonder to change from I'm not sure to a wonder of amazement and of wonder and of belief, because it's true. Because if Jesus can beat death, then all of this has to be true. And I want to encourage you on what is the weirdest Easter Sunday that any of us have, and I hope ever have to experience, to believe in the truth of a resurrected Jesus.